And thanks for joining us as we dive headfirst into all things people, power, and politics. This, my friends, is The Pulse. I'm Roop Raj. We always tell you the news cycle never takes a break, not even on this beautiful summer weekend we just came off. That's definitely the case here. So toss that phone aside and just hang out with us. We'll get you up to speed on everything you need to know. We'll begin here. Iran might not be the nuclear threat it once was, but cyber risk experts say you need to be on the lookout, on your guard for a different type of attack. What they're watching out for and how you can protect yourself. We're talking with cyber risk expert David Derajotis coming up in a moment. And the budget battle is raging on right now in Washington at this hour. The president has set a Friday deadline, but it's anyone's guess if that'll actually happen. We're debating it all with a Republican and a Democrat. And that budget bill, that battle is where we begin tonight because it was a marathon weekend on Capitol Hill. Senators considering possible amendments on the president's so-called big, beautiful bill, filled with both tax breaks and spending cuts. You hear a lot about filibusters in the Senate. And for those who don't know, a filibuster is basically a tactic used to delay or block a vote by using tactics like long speeches or debates. But that's not possible here since it's a reconciliation bill. So Democrats have to use other stall tactics instead, and they are. These are the two tactics the Democrats are using. They already forced a full reading of the bill over the weekend, all 940 pages of it. It's online if you want to check it out. That took 16 hours. Now they're doing an amendment blitz, filing dozens of them. Most of them are destined to fail, but Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says it's forcing his Republican colleagues to defend that bill. Now, as a reminder of what's in the bill, we're talking about $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. It's not only making up President Trump's 2017 ones permanent, but also adding one like no taxes on tips. That's another thing they want to add to the bill. Green energy tax credits would be rolled back, and there'd be more than $1 trillion in cuts, largely to Medicaid and food stamps. It would impose new work requirements, make sign-up eligibility stricter, and change federal reimbursements to states as well. And a new estimate by the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says it would actually add more than $3 trillion to the nation's deficit by the year 2034. And it would also leave nearly 12 million people without insurance by the year 2034. So we know where Democrats stand on all of that, but not all Republicans are on board either. Take a listen.
That's a good chance they'll offer all their amendments and they'll attack this thing as cutting taxes for billionaires. What we are doing here is extending tax relief for the American people, keeping the rates low.
It is inescapable that this bill in its current form will betray the very promise that Donald J. Trump made.
Let's reform Medicaid and save it for those people who need it, but let's make sure that people who are able-bodied go to work every day and don't get things for free.
This is not just a number. It affects your everyday life. Higher interest rates. Think about your credit cards, your car loans, your mortgages if you're fortunate to have one.
By the way, you heard from Senator Tom Tillis there, a North Carolina Republican who opposes the bill. President Trump vowed to campaign against him, and Tillis said it's becoming really clear lawmakers who embrace bipartisanship and demonstrate independent thinking are becoming what he called an endangered species. A lot of you with a lot to say on our Fox 2 Facebook page. We say this show is all about you, and we mean it. The budget battle affects all of us here on Main Street at home, regardless of where you live. And Patty has a lot to say. She says, feed the rich, kick the poor. He's laughing all the way to the Bitcoin bank. David, thanks for chiming in. You said Medicaid and Social Security cuts are for fraud, waste, and abuse. Just what I voted for. Mary Beth Cummings said, promises made, promises kept. He ran on all the things he's doing. The majority spoke. And Sherry says, hope it fails. Tonight, we're hearing from people in Michigan about the impact this could have on us here in this state. It's not just those possible cuts to Medicaid and SNAP that have people so worried, so concerned. Organizations providing emergency shelter and food distribution are really worried, too. And a man you know well, Oakland University political science professor Dave Dulio says it's too soon to tell what the impact might be.
We are really just in the middle of this process. We are nowhere near the finish line. Until we have a final version, I don't think anybody really knows what the results or what the consequences might be.
We realize that our job's just going to get that much more difficult. We'll be less resource to do more work.
Now, analysts think it's unlikely the bill will get through Congress by the president's July 4th deadline. We'll pick up that debate in just a few moments here. As we always say, there's never a shortage of political news, so let's pick up the pace and run through some of the other stories making news right now. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says trade talks with the U.S. are back on. That's after the nation rescinded its plan to tax U.S. tech firms. President Trump said last week he planned on suspending talks because of that tax. It was supposed to take effect today. Carney and Trump spoke on the phone yesterday, and Carney's office says they agreed to pick up the talks again. Those will resume very soon. The Supreme Court will be taking a Republican-led case trying to get rid of limits on political party spending in federal elections. The Supreme Court upheld the law back in 2001, but things have changed since then. The conservative majority's 2010 Citizens United decision opened the door to unlimited independent spending in federal elections. This latest case will be argued in the fall. And a group of Environmental Protection Agency employees published a declaration of dissent from its policies under the Trump administration. More than 170 employees signed their names. 100 more signed anonymously over fear of retaliation. They're pushing back against deregulation and what they say is disregard of scientific expertise. The EPA released a statement saying the new policies are a result of the administrator being briefed on the latest research and science, but it also criticized the Biden administration, saying they try to shut down American energy and make people more reliant on foreign fossil fuels. Now to a story that has so many of you talking, the president's so-called alligator Alcatraz. You hear about this? It's in the Florida Everglades. It's just days away from being operational at an abandoned airport. Now, here's the deal. They set up heavy-duty tents, trailers, and temporary buildings like the ones you see during natural disasters. But here's the deal. Environmental groups are trying to block it right now at the 11th hour, saying officials didn't look at the impact this could have. DHS officials say the land has been developed for a decade. The facility could hold as many as 5,000 people detained by ICE.
You know, to give them this is just unacceptable. Our demands are to leave the Everglades, to leave this land as it be.
It's not good for the water, it's not good for the wildlife and the habitats. Why is it here?
There will be some very dangerous criminal aliens that get processed through here. But if for some reason someone would be able to get out, where are you going to go? You going to dodge alligators for 50 miles to try to get to? No, it's not going to happen.
Alligator Alcatraz could open as soon as tomorrow. It'll cost around $450 million a year, and FEMA will reimburse Florida for those dollars. All right, we're turning back to the budget battle on Capitol Hill. A GOP divide, an amendment blitz by Democrats, and a ticking clock. Will Republicans meet the president's Friday deadline? We're diving into that with political commentators Gina Keller and Brandon Brice. You're watching The Pulse on Fox 2. Back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. Here now to talk about President Trump's big, beautiful bill and whether it'll actually get to his desk by the 4th of July like he wants. In studio, Distill Social co-founder and political commentator Gina Keller, and live via Zoom, host of the Brice is Right podcast and conservative columnist Brandon Brice. Good to see you both. Thank you for joining us here on The Pulse.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So let's begin with you, Brandon. Now, you're out there and you spend a lot of time in D.C. As you take the pulse of what Republicans are saying right now, are you hearing more from some of these Republicans out there who are kind of like disturbed by how much debt this bill would actually accumulate? I know that, you know, Tom Tillis and Senator Rand Paul are talking a lot about that. Are you hearing that in any circles there?
You know, I think, first of all, let's just be fair. The president controls the House, the Senate, and the courts. And so I think, you know, will the vote pass? Yes. The challenge is, I think Republicans now are saying, do I stick with the president or do I worry about having to go back to my district, especially those Southern senators who have rural hospitals that are going to be impacted by this bill? The issue is they don't want the wrath of Trump. And here's the catch. I said this from day one, promises made, promises kept. The president said he was going to do it, and he's doing it. And I can tell you, you know, it's a shame. I heard earlier when Schumer said that they're actually reading the bill. They should have been reading the bill. This is the problem with Washington of passing bills, and you have absolutely no sense of what's in the bill. Now all of a sudden they want to read the bill.
Brandon,
it was Republicans in a situation.
That was a delay tactic because they couldn't do a filibuster. But let's be honest about who didn't read the bill, too. Marjorie Taylor Greene, when it passed the House, admitted that she didn't read the bill. And had she known there was an AI stipulation about state sovereignty in there, she actually would not have passed the bill. So I think there's blame on both sides when you have a 940-page bill of people who aren't reading them who are both blue or red, wouldn't you say?
Roop, this is the problem with Washington.
Yeah.
We're not paying you to give celebrity speeches. We're paying you to read the bill. And what, if anything, what this bill has shown is that the system is broken. And I can tell you, whether you like the president or not, the fact that those senators, if we've got to pass our budget, they should too. No senator should go home if this bill is not passed.
All right. So right now we know that Mr. Tillis, the senator from North Carolina, is essentially being threatened with his political career as Trump says that he will campaign against him. Mr. Tillis, in response, Gina Keller said that he believes that bipartisanship and independent thinking and those who have that are basically endangered species. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, as Brice just pointed out, we have handfuls of Republicans who know this bill is bad for their constituents, but are going to vote for it anyway because they don't want to become the latest Trump meme. It's just insane. And when you think about the implications here in Michigan, 40% of babies born in Michigan are paid for by Medicaid. Half of Medicaid recipients or Medicare recipients in Michigan are children. So these are the people and the things. We're cutting babies and children to raise the deficit by $3 trillion. And absolutely, Brice, you said Trump made these promises. He promised not to raise the deficit, and now he's going to make the biggest raise in history. So while making the biggest cuts to our healthcare services and food assistance in history. So
I want to ask you, Gina, because we hear a lot about, so there's 12 million people who will be without health insurance. We know that some of those folks are going to be the illegal migrants who came here who will lose insurance. Others, because of work requirements that will become stricter, will lose insurance. Do you think that Democrats are using those losses as a generalization to say, look what will happen to all the moms and the babies out there? Do you think that that's a scare tactic, or do you really believe that innocent moms who are pulling their weight are going to lose this?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a complete misnomer and intellectually dishonest to be out there saying we need to add work requirements because there's people taking, assistance from the government that doesn't deserve it. No, like I just pointed out, it's 50% of the people getting these assistance are children. Michigan has 41,000 veterans who receive food assistance that's going to be cut from this bill. These aren't people who are, generally out there just looking for a way to scam more. By and large, the people who are receiving these benefits absolutely need them and deserve them, and it's our, duty to take care of people.
Brandon Brice, back to you over there on Zoom. I want to ask you your thoughts on when you hear Senator Rand Paul and Senator Tillis say, look, this will increase the debt ceiling. It'll increase the debt in general. I think we're talking about more than $3 trillion the national deficit will be added to. This is a president who said spending and not spending is important and balancing the budget is important. This is a president who talked about fiscal responsibility. Do you think that that's a problem here?
Well, first of all, the devil's in the detail. Let's not add words. What the president is focusing on was getting rid of waste and fraud when we look at these policies. If you look at where the increase was, it was actually in military spending, which tells me something about where is that telling me that the president is saying the country's going? Different conversation, different story. But I think one of the challenges that you're going to see now, what this bill is doing is it's proving who's with the president and who is not. And unfortunately, I read that Tillis now is talking about not seeking re-election. To me, I think it's time for the Republicans who are opposed stand up and offer amendments. Don't run, because I think what's happening now is, again, like I said before, those Senate Republicans specifically who deal with either rural or southern hospitals and things of that will be impacted.
Sure.
They've got to make a choice. Do I stand up against the president, or do I go along to get along and keep my seat?
Let me ask you this. Shouldn't we leave high school where high school was and talk for a moment about what it is that we're doing here? We're trying to win a popularity contest with the president on the backs of people who need food benefits. Do you see that as an issue?
I think it's the culture of Washington, Rupert. Unfortunately, it's broken. Whether we talk about, those politicians, Democrats and Republicans, who vote for things that they know they're against because it's all about saving your seat. Folks like the good life in Washington, unfortunately, and they don't want to give it up.
Gina, we've seen this both with Democrats and Republicans, people fighting for their political careers, and they're doing this on the backs of so many people who are their constituents. What are some parting words you have with this conversation as the Senate takes up this bill?
This bill is just for the 1%. They are literally taking from the 99% of American citizens to give tax cuts to billionaires who don't need them at the expense of the everyday person and everyday Michigander. Our costs are going to raise. In Michigan, your household energy costs are going to go up 8%. And they have these little, scams, I'm going to call it, like no tax on tips. That's a misnomer.
But what
There's so many carve-outs in that. If you charge your tip on your credit card, that is exempt, and they're paying tax on it.
And most people use credit cards. But I want to ask you this: the 2017 tax cuts, if they become permanent, we're talking about increasing the standard deduction, increasing the child tax, larger child tax credits. People say that can fuel the economy and help the middle class. It did in 2017. Do you see why wouldn't that happen again?
We're not having that benefit this time because of the mass destruction that the rest of this bill is going to wreak on industry in Michigan. You're going to see healthcare costs rising. You're going to see healthcare workers laid off. I mean, the ripple effect of this bill, it's too big.
Brandon, we talk often about this scalpel versus the sledgehammer, whether or not you should use a chainsaw or you should actually use the scalpel. Your thoughts on whether or not there's a better way to do this?
I think the better way is to actually read the bill. And unfortunately, what we've seen on both sides, and again, this is the culture of Washington, folks are passing things, but they're not reading what's in the bill. And I think this president is showing the American people, not only is there fraud and waste, but he's showing you what's happening when we talk about the games that are being played of saying, oh, well, this is going to be cut. Let's look at the effectiveness. Let's look at the things of, what is the impact that these bills are making? You know what it is? At the end of the day, the president, whether you like the guy or not, he's delivering on his promise. And so now those senators have to make a decision. And I can tell you, for many, it's going to be a long walk home when they get home.
Fireworks are coming up this week, and it's not the only ones in the sky, but the ones happening inside the Capitol, and we'll be here for all of it. Brandon Brice, we thank you for your time here. Gina Keller as well.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, both of you. You know what? Another big story we're following today. Iran might have retaliated for the U.S. airstrike last week, but new reports say missiles aren't what we should be concerned about. The cyber warfare warning that you need to know about with a cyber risk expert you know well, David Derajotis, next on The Pulse. It is People, Power, and Politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show. Good to be with you. This is The Pulse. Joining us to talk about the cyber threat Iran poses, cyber risk expert David Derajotis. David, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So we know that the nuclear stockpile, depending on where your politics lies, you'll say that it's all been eradicated or so much of it has through these attacks, or we still have a nuclear threat. However, there's another attack that everyone should be paying attention to, and that's cyber attacks. Why should we be concerned with Iran and cyber attacks?
Yeah, Roop, there's a lot of fear and uncertainty surrounding these headlines. We need to cut through the noise and separate fact from fiction. Is there a concern with Iran? Absolutely. Do they have strong capabilities? They do. However, they are not as strong as some of the other adversaries that we have. You look at China, you look at Russia, or the United States, our own capabilities, for that matter. They're not on par. It's about understanding the threats and then responding accordingly.
So what kind of threats would any state make against the U.S. and its citizens? Talk about China, talk about Iran, and talk about the others.
Sure. We're talking about very advanced, persistent threats, being able to get into networks, develop 0 days, which are vulnerabilities, uncovering vulnerabilities that the developer, the coder, doesn't even know about. Those are very advanced. There's a lot of espionage. There's a lot of time spent in networks. That's not necessarily what Iran is known for. They're more destruction. They have wiper viruses that they've created, ransomware, social engineering. Those are the things that we all need to be on the lookout for.
When you say social engineering, dive into that for a moment. What does that mean?
Sure. It's all about creating fear and an immediate response out of whoever that you're targeting. It's creating a false narrative. You're getting somebody to give up information, getting somebody to click on a link, open an attachment, and that's when you're introducing a virus or some sort of malware.
We have a lot of questions from viewers. In fact, they're coming in right now. Greg, a regular viewer on the Pulse, we thank you for your question. Greg is asking, is it numbers or words that get us in trouble when it comes to cybersecurity?
Yeah, well, it can certainly be both. It depends on how much information we're sharing and what it can lead to, certainly. You look at some of the largest attacks that we've had over the years. You look at ransomware. You look at what you're sharing online that creates the ability to carry out social engineering. In those cases, it's certainly words.
Let's talk about another question here. Edison, thanks for writing in here on the Pulse. He's basically saying, asking, are these true? Keeping personal information minimal, using PayPal, and not opening mail from people you don't know. I think a couple of those are obvious, but the PayPal struck me as interesting. Use PayPal? Is that a thing?
Well, I think PayPal, like along with using other credit cards or other type of digital payments, maybe it's Apple, maybe it's what you have on your Google Android phone, those are all a variety of secure methods of using payment. You just have to understand which one you want to be able to use, whether it's a multitude of them, and then be very careful and specific with how you're using it.
There's personal responsibility that we have to look at and guard ourselves from those dangers. But then there are institutions that we don't control, companies and banks. What are the big concerns when it comes to cyber threats and the potential for threats against those entities?
Yeah, when we're looking at Iran in particular, Roop, you look at some of the attacks that they've carried out in the past against entities. You look at Saudi Aramco. Back in 2012, it was a wiper virus. You had 30 to 35,000 workstations that were taken out. You have to be able to find and identify, we talked about social engineering, is somebody targeting you? Are they getting you to click on a link or open an attachment that's going to introduce some type of malware, some type of virus? Those are the things as it relates to Iran that you need to be on guard for, making sure that your systems are up to date, everything is patched. Very critical things to install.
And so the IT person in every building is perhaps at any organization one of the most important people and the pillar of security right now.
Yeah, they absolutely are, but here's the big thing. Cybersecurity is just not the responsibility of IT, it's everybody's responsibility. So making sure that the entire organization, all people, have gone through training, can spot phishing attacks or social engineering attacks that are taking place, that know to install patches and updates. It's the entire organization's responsibility, not just one particular group.
And this show is not about fear, but information. So I'm asking you about information when it comes to protecting our infrastructure, when it comes to our water and our electricity. There must be so many safeguards in place and people that we see and don't see who are protecting that.
Absolutely. You look at telecommunications, you look at the water treatment facilities. Again, there have been attacks against all of these different operations, organizations, area of critical infrastructure. There are countless people that are behind the scenes that are working to protect, to air gap, to segment all of those networks to keep everybody safe.
Well, we hope that this conversation remains right here and we don't have to ever dive deeper into it. Important to understand our personal responsibility in a world that certainly poses a lot of danger. So we thank you for your time. David Darajota, cyber risk expert. Always good to see you. That is the Pulse for tonight. We thank you always for joining us. I'm Roop Raj. As always, it was great to be with you.